everyone, and welcome to the Garage with Bonesaw. Today we'll be looking at the German Tier 5 artillery piece, the Grille. The Grille is only recently a Tier 5 artillery piece. Prior to patch 8.6, it was actually a Tier 4 vehicle, and it was a very good Tier 4 vehicle. Had a very powerful 150mm gun, and the gun is still very powerful and very accurate. However, a number of minor changes have occurred to the Grille that possibly could make it a weaker tank. I, however, disagree. I still think the Grille is a very powerful vehicle. So where do we start with the Grille? Well, first off, it's based on the Panzer 38T chassis. The Germans were very fond of building vehicles off of it because it was very reliable chassis. This is the Ausf M variant with the gun compartment in the rear. The Ausf T variant had the gun compartment on the front. Anyway, so where do we start with the Grille? You start with a 15cm L11 gun, which is much shorter. You can tell the difference based on the number of bands on the barrel. The L11 gun only has one band, whereas the L17 has three. Now, the Grille formerly had full map range with this gun. It no longer does. However, it still has an adequate range to be able to hide in the backfield and support your team with very precise and very damaging high explosive shells. Its traverse speed of 24 isn't amazing, but it's good enough to get your gun on target. Your standard shell penetration is alright. It can do considerable damage to heavy tanks, especially things like the Churchill that don't have very heavy top armor, and with a 510 to 850 damage spread, it's a very, very potent gun. The average damage on it is roughly about 680. Generally you will get lower rolls than this because you won't penetrate, but it's still very, very effective against enemy tanks, and you can do a considerable amount of critical damage with this gun, even against heavily armoured vehicles. It has a listed speed limit of 42, however normally that's closer to about 34. It does get to that top speed very quickly. It has a pretty good power to weight ratio. 240 hit points isn't much. Most enemy artillery pieces will kill you in a single shot because you are open topped. And generally, like most artillery pieces, if the enemy get close to you, you will inevitably die. You can engage in direct fire against the enemy with this tank, but much like with any other artillery piece as of 8.6, it's much harder to do. Overall, you just want to rely on your team and hope that they can protect you. I do have some pre-8.6 footage to show you just how effective the Grille used to be. It used to be a very potent artillery piece, especially in counter-battery fire. It could very easily destroy enemy artillery pieces that revealed themselves early in the game. The Grille isn't quite as suited to that role anymore, but it's still a very strong tank. Its shells have a considerable amount of splash damage. They have about a 3.57 explosion radius, which means even if you don't hit them directly, you can still do some damage, take some tracks off, which is very useful. It can fire heat ammunition, which is a viable choice in this tank due to its high accuracy. So long as the enemy stays still, you can land some very consistent direct hits with that very, very high penetration heat ammunition. And that gives you the potential to one-shot plenty of heavy tanks, making the Grille still a very, very viable artillery piece. It's also very small, which makes it easy to conceal and quite hard to engage in counter-battery fire. Overall, in terms of modules and upgrades, it has a 350 meter view range, but view range is irrelevant on artillery, generally speaking. Its signal range is 710 meters, which is great for an artillery piece. Lets you stay in contact with your enemy, your allies, and know where the enemies are. Its rate of fire is 2.55 rounds per minute, which is pretty good. You can get some consistent damage out that way. You just have to make sure that you fully aim and place your shots, much like with any artillery piece now. And its armor is junk, but that's to be expected. It's an artillery piece. You don't look for good armor in artillery pieces, you look for concealability and damage output. In terms of upgrades, don't bother with the spall liner. It's useless. It will not protect you from anything. Enhanced springs, I wouldn't recommend either. The load limit on this thing is pretty high anyway, so you don't need to increase it. Camouflage net is good. Surprisingly, mine's not installed. I think that might have been due to 8.6 with the changes to camouflage nets. Anyway, so camouflage net is a good upgrade. It lets you hide in bushes much more easily. Wet ammo rack, don't bother with that. Shell rammer can be a good upgrade for this tank to increase your rate of fire. Binoculars and code optics also don't bother. Gun laying drive. Now, previously I wouldn't have recommended the enhanced gun laying drive, but now the aim time on the Grille and all artillery in general has increased. So the gun laying drive is a viable choice. I do have one mounted on my French AMX 13 F3 artillery piece. But on the Grille, I don't think it's an absolute must, but it's very good. Toolbox once again is a bit of a useless upgrade. Generally, with this low tier artillery and most artillery in general, you don't need that many upgrades. They won't be very useful. They generally don't offer you much in the way of your battlefield role, and in terms of survivability, like a wet ammo rack won't help you. Generally, this thing gets killed by just standard fire anyway, not ammo rack detonations. Spall liner won't protect you from explosions because you're an open-topped vehicle. So in the end, it's irrelevant. The Grille is a great tank for learning the nuances of the German artillery tech tree, and it gives you some good learning with that 150mm gun in preparation for the Hummel, which has two 150mm guns, and it's also a highly effective tank. So here we are on steps with the German Tier 4 Grille artillery piece. And this is patch 8.5 footage, so it is Tier 4 in this. As of patch 8.6, it is now Tier 5 artillery. But either way, the Grille is still quite an effective little piece of machinery. I have yet to play it in 8.6 as I'm recording this video, but I'll show you how effective it is in this game. Alright, so here we are just following our A20 scout, see if we can get some early game spots on the enemy. Alright, he's been spotted because someone's opening fire on him. Alright, we've got eyes on a M6 Heavy. As you can see, it's a very tier 8 game. And I missed that shot, but the Grille can still compete at tier matching like this. Its 155mm gun is quite effective. Alright, so we've spotted enemy artillery, and he unfortunately is not smart enough to have moved after being spotted, so engaging in some counter battery fire.
Enemy vehicle knocked down.
So we've taken out one of their artillery pieces, and just in case the enemy M41 is watching, I'm moving. You'll see really good artillery players displace virtually after every shot, and you can see they'll fire, and before the shot's even landed, they'll be moving. I'm not quite at that level, but I am cautious enough. Now, over on this flank, we're kind of lucky because they're pretty much lining up for us to shell them. Good hit right there, 295 damage roll. Pretty low considering this gun has a potential damage of about between 500 and 900, but if you don't penetrate their armor, you generally will receive much lower than that. So firing a secondary shot, unfortunately, it falls short. Once again, relocating. It is always a good idea to relocate just a little bit after every few shots, because if the enemy are attempting counter battery fire against you, they will be looking for those shell traces. Got an M18 Hellcat over here. If a Hellcat sits still, they are a perfect target for artillery. With 18mm of armor, you can more than likely one-shot them every time. Another Hellcat lurking behind the rocks there. You'll notice my aiming circle didn't move. That's because if you hold right click when on an artillery view, you can move your view without de-aiming your gun. It's useful for checking if there are any relevant targets. Alright. Still going after these Hellcats over here. Alright. I put a good hit into that
That was close.
VK3601, tracking him. Fagerline takes out the Hellcat, and my next shot will finish off the VK36 straight through the side plate.
Enemy vehicle
It's a
destroyed.
almost 400 damage roll. That's a quite good roll, but he's completely and utterly annihilated. Alright, now we've spotted the enemy artillery, and he hasn't moved either, so I'm going to drop a shell on him as well. It is a good idea to go after enemy artillery, because they are, generally speaking, pretty easy kills, and
Enemy armor is destroyed.
they're important to take out. Now, as you see, we have a Jagdpanther moving down the centre line, and this was actually somewhat ironic, because we'd been joking around at the start of this game saying, oh, what are we going to get outflanked by? It's, you know, we're going to get outflanked by an IS-2, or you know, the artillery is going to get wiped out by a Jagdpanther, and surprisingly enough, the Jagdpanther did come down the centre. Only target left is a E2 Sherman, and he's largely surrounded. He's going to die, but I give him credit for using the 76mm gun instead of the 105mm. Far too many Shermans use the 105mm. And last shot here to finish off the Sherman.
Enemy armor is destroyed.
So that's 4 kills in the Grille artillery piece. So here we are again in the Grille German artillery piece. We're on Lakeville this time, and it's a very tier 8 game. Enemy artillery consists of an M41 and an AMX 105, I believe, which is a little bit concerning. The M41 is it's one of those artillery pieces. You never used to see them very much, but they've become quite popular. They have a very large gun. It's not very accurate, but has quite substantial splash damage, and they're very good at counter battery fire. Just because that splash damage, if they don't hit you directly, they can still kill you if they land the shell close enough. As you'll see later, he goes artillery hunting and he almost kills me, and he does indeed take out Oberst Fagerline. Right now there's a Hellcat and a Tiger moving down Centre Road. I have no idea where my first shell went. It didn't land in the aiming circle. I have no idea what it hit, so probably the side of the mountain there with the blast marker. Right. So I'll take out that Hellcat.
Enemy armor is destroyed.
At this point I'm deciding to move, because when that Tiger comes down that centre road, I'm more than likely going to be the first thing he sees, and that's never an opportunity that you want to give to a heavy tank, especially with only 220 health. Most tanks of this tier can and will kill you in one shot. Alright, so I'm relocating over here. I don't want to be up on top of that little hillock, because the enemy, if they're cresting the hill, will be able to see me. So instead I'm going to lurk behind it in this bush. So far we have a pretty good separation of our team. We've got a few in the town, and sufficient tank destroyers and heavy tanks in the valley along the 2 line. Switching over to drop some shells in the town. As you can see, I've got a clear shot behind this church, and it really turns into a bit of an artillerist stream. As you can see, they're all hanging around the corner of that church. So I put a hit into that KV-1S. As you can see, they're all hiding behind this church in a big herd, trying to get into cover. Unfortunately for them, they're all grouped together perfectly for artillery. So put another one with the KV-1S, take him down to 8%. And really, this is what you don't want to do in games like this. You really don't want to stack up on these corners, because artillery will just keep dropping shells on you and ruining your day. So I miss a shot there, but they know artillery is shooting at them, and the more I kind of keep them on their toes, the more effective our guys in the town will be. Also, the more critical damage I do, the less effective the enemy will be. Alright. So I drop one on this KV-1S, take him out. About nowish, I'll start getting that M41 shooting at me. As you can see, he's taken out my commander and blown off my tracks. I'm very lucky that wasn't a direct hit. As you can see, the splash damage on an M41 is substantial. But my tracks are back up, and now I'm moving. My new position will be behind this large mountain ridge to protect me from counter battery fire. I did largely get overconfident there, and I really should have moved from the position I was in before I did, but I'm thankfully still alive, and while this position isn't quite as good as the last one, I'm still more than capable of dropping shells behind this church. It's important to remember though that M41 is actively looking for enemy artillery to hunt. Just waiting for this IS-6 to hopefully back up into my target zone, but thankfully a Löwe has made himself apparent, so I'll just drop a shell into his rear plate. Low damage roll, but I've more than likely damaged something. Our T-150's saying something about Artie, I'm not sure what. He never made this clear, because we'd spent a good portion of the game dropping shells on enemies. Just take that T-34 down for the KV-40 kill him. I'm trying to drop some more shells in this Löwe, but unfortunately he backs up into cover before I can really effectively fire at him. One shell would more than likely finish that Löwe off, but instead I decided to help our tank on the corner here. Drop some shells in this IS-6. Unfortunately, only 89 damage there, which is extremely low. This track must have eaten most of that, so it's a bafflingly low roll. Next shot impacts the church, unfortunately, doesn't do any damage. The splash radius on the Grille is substantial. It's not quite as large as most American artillery, but it is still useful. Very effective at keeping enemy tanks tracked, and in close scenarios like that you can really put some hurt on. The Grille is also very accurate. It's surprisingly a lot more consistent than the Hummel at the tier above it. Although I do have a 100% trained crew. This Fegelein putting a hit into that Churchill 7. Unfortunately, the enemy M41 counter batteries Fegelein. Put another shot into the Churchill Mark 7 and move. As I may have mentioned in the Churchill Mark 7 review, none of the Churchill tanks are very survivable versus artillery. High explosive shells tear those things to pieces, and so it's generally good to target tanks like them when you're in artillery, because they're just tremendously easy kills. Alright, I'm reloaded, so I'll move into position to drop another shell on the Churchill Mark 7. The M41's been taken out by a T-29, and I'll finish off the Churchill for my third kill of the game. So as you can see, the Grille, a very versatile tank, and it's more than effective at high tier games like this. The AMX 105 will be taken out shortly, and that'll be game for us. Prokhorovka with the German Grille. It's now tier 5 because this is a 8.6 game. So we'll be getting to see how the Grille performs after the changes to artillery that were made in 8.6. I can tell you that it's still very accurate for an artillery piece, and that it still does quite a substantial amount of damage. However, some significant changes have been made to its load time and its aim time, as well as its range. Unfortunately, you'll see later on, the Grille does not have full map range anymore. It has close to about 80% of it. From this position where I am right now, my max range will be about start of the B sector, and that really hinders the Grille in its capacity to engage in counter battery fire, and makes it somewhat limited in engaging enemy artillery pieces. So as you can see here, still very accurate. If that Type T-34 hadn't moved, that would have been a direct hit. Probably would have destroyed him. But switching over onto the left flank here to support the push. Not going to bother with the Jagdpanzer IV because I won't be reloaded in time, he'll probably die. Hetzer has taken out T-40, but he's about to die. gets on very low health. I'll take a shot at him anyway. Surprised the splash damage didn't kill him, but you know, that's the way with artillery. Sometimes you don't get the splash. That's actually been a big problem for the French artillery as of 8.6. Is a lot of their early artillery pieces, especially the new AMX 105. It doesn't have very much splash damage on the gun, meaning that if you miss or don't get a direct hit, you can't really count on doing much damage. Thankfully, their guns can be quite accurate, if somewhat inconsistent. I'm going to destroy this T-40. As you can see, the Grille is still very good at destroying open-topped vehicles. As you can see, the Churchill 1 is just out of my range, so I'm going to wait for my gun to load and switch to the other flank. See if this M4 needs to be destroyed. He's on low health, so I won't even bother taking a shot, but it's still good to pay attention because his firing might reveal enemies that I can then engage. Not everyone knows this, but if you fire within a bush, close enough, if you fire within 15 meters of a bush, it reveals any allies who are hiding in that bush. So, you know, try and be considerate sometimes. He could very easily have revealed enemy tank destroyers if they'd been hiding nearby. This ELC AMX is going to attack the Churchill 7. And unfortunately he's going to decide to ram himself to death against it. If he was smart, he would have moved, and that way me and the Sturmpanzer and the M41 could have just rained shells on him, but unfortunately the AMX isn't too bright, and it's just letting the Churchill wear him down. So he's going to die shortly. See, there we go. There's the AMX gone. And drop a shell on the Churchill. Bam. Big hit there. 582 damage hit. Very accurate. Now I want to engage all those enemies at the end of the road, but unfortunately Grille's range just isn't long enough, so I'm going to move up to this area that we've secured. And that way I should have the range. Alright, so we only have 4 enemy tanks remaining, 2 artillery pieces. Now the biggest concern here is probably that Panzer IV, because if he sneaks past, he can very easily kill me. And this is really the big flaw of the Grille now, is that range on the gun. I have to move all the way forward to the G sector to get comfortably close enough to engage the enemies. And this means that you're very vulnerable to enemy counter-battery fire, and you're not very good at taking out enemy artillery early in the game. Means that you'll have to rely on your allies to destroy enemy artillery. However, I'm going to go after this AMX 13F3, because they're a very potent piece of artillery. So I'm going to take him out. I think that the Grille's real usefulness now is in the mid and late game situations like this, where you can really bring that 150mm gun into play. Really punish those heavy tanks in the mid game when your team's trying to push, and in late game just destroy those wounded or tough enemy tanks, things like British tank destroyers that can be more resistant to some of the firepower that may be remaining on your team. So our 3601H is just taking out the Stuck. Panzer IV is trying to outflank our British TD. They're our AT7, I believe. and now all that's left is an AMX 105. And in the end, we don't get him. We win this game by capping, but you know, that's a 8.6 game in the Grille. Sure, the range isn't as great as it used to be, but as you can see, the aim circle is still great, the gun still does a lot of damage, and the tank itself overall is still a very good artillery piece, even at tier 5.